This is DeliveranceMinistry.fm VideoCast number 42. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of DeliveranceMinistry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so that you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. This is Dr. Don Ibbotson here, once again with my colleague and co-host, Dr. Phyllis Tarbox.
Hey, Don. Good
to have you here, as always. We enjoy doing these, and we're actually coming into the last episode of a 6-part series that we have been doing on spiritual warfare and the different temperament types. I encourage you to listen to the first episode in the series, which is episode 37, where we give an overview about the 5 different temperament types: choleric, melancholy, supine, sanguine, and phlegmatic. We talk about the different aspects of the temperament. Listen to that episode. Also go to our website, because we got a lot more information there than we can cover in these podcasts. Because as you understand the temperaments and the purpose of them, you're going to get a lot more out of this podcast. Today we're going to focus on the temperament type that is characterized by being kind of a peacemaker, low energy type, and that's the phlegmatic temperament. We'll get into that in a moment, but let me just say the reason that we're doing this is because every temperament type, each of the 5 different temperament types, has different strengths and weaknesses. And the demonic realm, which knows a lot about us, sees us, what we do, hears what we say, they know a lot about how we're wired and how we're created and the different strategies and tactics they will use on different temperament types. Not everything's going to be successful for one particular temperament type. So as you understand your God-given temperament, then you can be better equipped really on several levels to do better in your relationships with your family, if you're married, or your children. And that's important, and that's where we use temperamental analysis a lot. But also in the realm of spiritual warfare, and this is an area we've been moving into more and more, that as you understand your specific temperament, the strengths and the weaknesses of it, you'll be better attuned to see how the demonic kingdom is going to work in your particular case and where you're most vulnerable. So we're going to talk about the main elements, if you like, of the phlegmatic temperament type today. We're going to talk about some of the strengths of that temperament, and then we'll move quickly into what are the weaknesses, where are the areas where we're most vulnerable, and where we have temperament weaknesses, that's where we need the Lord. By the grace, the promise is, praise God, He will change us and transform us into His likeness. And so where you've got weaknesses, God can work on those. So we want to tell you what the weaknesses are for that temperament. And then based on that, you'll see the most, we'll talk about the most common demonic strongholds that we see in the phlegmatic temperament for people that we minister to here in our center. And it's worth emphasizing that there's very few people who are pure temperament, like purely phlegmatic. They might be phlegmatic in inclusion, melancholy in control, and supine in affection. Okay. So what we're focusing on here is elements of the phlegmatic temperament. And a person can, as I say, can be phlegmatic in inclusion, social orientation, if you like, or control or affection. And that's the areas that we're focusing on here. And really the only way to know your temperament is to get a temperament profile done. And we do those at the counseling center. We're happy to do those for you. We run the programs, run the reports, and then we do a counseling session to go over that profile with you. We do it over in the office. We do it worldwide. So that's something you might want to consider. But with that kind of preamble and background, let's jump in and talk today in some more depth about the phlegmatic temperament. Phyllis, tell us about that temperament type.
Well, this temperament is a real peacekeeper. I think that's the big thing about this one. They don't seem to get their feathers ruffled at all. They're just very peaceful. They can function very well in a very hostile environment, and they can take on tedious tasks. And they relate to both tasks and peaceful. But, I think the overgoing thing with this one is they're very calm, they're very easygoing, they're efficient, but they can be very perfectionistic as well. They're practical people. They're generally fairly conservative. But like I said before, they can be a very good peacemaker or an arbitrator.
They love peace, right?
They love peace at all costs. Yeah, they hate confrontations. They're very, very even balanced. They're not demanding. And so they don't demand a lot of love. They don't demand a lot of attention. They just have very like middle of the road needs. Needs and wants are very centered.
Go with the flow.
Yeah.
Avoid the conflict. Can be indecisive. They tend to procrastinate, as we'll see. Difficult to motivate. But I think you hit on it. They're generally just well-balanced people.
Yeah.
They just kind of go non-demanding, easy, calm. Just don't typically get themselves all out of joint very much. They're very good. Typically, they're observers. I think we see many times they're observers of life. They're
good.
just like to sit on the sidelines and kind of watch life go by. Don't typically get involved a lot in deep relationships and deep things of life. And so, but I think to summarize the real strengths of them, they're very they can relate to people. They can do tasks. They're very comfortable doing tedious tasks. They're comfortable doing the same job over and over again. Could be calm, easygoing, efficient, perfectionist.
I had a boss like this. I loved it. He was just the easiest guy in the whole wide world to work with. He never got angry with you. You could really blow it, and he never got upset. But he was a fairly decent delegator. But I tell you what, he just never got involved. He just stayed on the outside, just refused to get involved with. So I ended up being the front man, he was happy to let me go.
You took the heat.
I didn't go out and do the heat. Yep. And he sat behind and just took credit for just about everything. But
well, there can be strengths, I guess, for a boss like that. He's not in your hair all the time. So
yeah, that was worth it.
And I think that's important, though. They can, any of these people, they can be good managers. They can be
they're great managers
in that realm in terms of in areas that they're comfortable with. So those are some of the main elements, if you like, of the phlegmatic temperament. So let's look at now. Before we get into the stronghold side of it, that the demonic realm will try to exploit, from a temperament standpoint, again, what are the major weaknesses that we see with the temperaments? We touched on them a little bit, but we want to highlight them for you so that they're very, very clear. Major weaknesses of the phlegmatic temperament.
I think the biggest one is that they're very uninvolved in life. They're like on their own island, and they really like it there. So they're not motivated to be to change their ways. They don't want to be involved with people. And it's very difficult. I think with that uninvolvement, it's very difficult to motivate them. So they're uninvolved and they're unmotivated.
Not motivated by threat of punishment
or
reward, or they just kind of that's a challenge. If you can imagine, if you're in relationships, especially.
Well, a parent too.
Or a parent.
There's just no way. I mean, I've had plenty of parents come in with these children that are phlegmatic, and they tell me they've tried all the charts. They've had the stars if they do this, if they do that, and they've done everything, but they just can't seem to motivate them. It doesn't look like they have any desire for themselves to get ahead. And they don't really care what anybody else thinks. And I think those are the two big things.
They're pretty big. And you could summarize, use the word stubborn. I mean, they're just very stubborn people. They're just difficult to get off the dime.
Yeah.
Decided something. They want to do something or not do something. That's just where you are. So that's a weakness, obviously. And of course, the things of God. I mean, we're called to be involved in life. I mean, God's got a plan for our life to prosper us, not to harm us, but we got to cooperate. We got to move with Him, and be part of that. So that definitely can be a real weakness.
The funny thing I think is we've said there's no temperament matchups that are not of God. But you know what? If you put this temperament with a cleric, I have never seen a cleric get more frustrated than when they're married to a phlegmatic. Because the cleric, they're the motivators, they're the shakers, they want to take charge, and you cannot make this one move. And it just, that's what brings an awful lot of frustration into relationships.
Well, it is, and it's probably a good place to interject a quick, I don't know if plug is the right word, or at least a note of hope. I mean, different temperaments doesn't relate to, well, if you're a cleric, you should only marry a phlegmatic.
No.
You should marry a phlegmatic or a melancholy. Different temperament types can have very happy marriages and successful marriages, marrying somebody that's different themselves. And every temperament has its own challenges, right?
Yes.
Strengths and weaknesses. And but once again, if you know your partner's temperament and they know yours, and they're motivated, each ideally is motivated to serve and meet the other's needs, and then that can be a positive. But yeah, there's some, fire. What do they say? Matching fire and gasoline.
Yeah, the
temperament
stubbornness
types.
of this one, when it hits the choleric temperament, it does have a little bit of fire that goes along with it. That would be a good point.
So, all right. So they're difficult to motivate, tend to be uninvolved in life. Those are weaknesses. And then I'd say there's because they're generally characterized, I'd say as you might discern, by kind of low energy. They're just kind of low energy types. They sit back. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an animal example. An animal who's not aggressive and will attack and needs something to defend themselves with if they're attacked. And the phlegmatics will generally use their tongue. They will use their mouth as a self-defenseism. They will use sarcasm, right?
Yes.
Or critical spirit.
Yep.
To kind of a wry sense of humor to keep others at bay.
That's good.
And so, that's just part of the defense mechanism. I believe that the phlegmatics have. They will use sarcasm, critical. They can be critical of others just to kind of keep that person
at bay,
at arm's length.
Yeah.
Whoa, you're in my space here.
Yeah, it definitely is self-defending. They'll drop a little sarcastic bomb and then they just keep right on moving, and then it usually has the other person just sitting there, whoa, what was that and where did that come from? And that gets them off the hook and they can just move right on. They don't like to get involved in deep conversations with people.
Well, exactly. And of course, other temperament types can use sarcasm and be critical too. It's not like phlegmatics have a lock on that sarcasm thing, but that for them, it's just, man, they just sit back and I guess you could say like a porcupine. I'm trying to think of my analogy example, that porcupine, that quill, whoop, touch that, quill, you're going to hurt. Well, that porcupine, man, that phlegmatic will just toss out that barb, that tongue, and woo, just to kind of keep the person at bay. So
yeah, it's kind of surprising coming from them because they're usually pretty peaceful. So when you get that sarcasm coming your way, you can generally, if they're not directly aiming it at you, there's truth in what they're saying so that you catch it. And they may not confront directly because they don't confront, but
when they don't get angry. You don't see them get angry too much.
They just drop that little bomb with the sarcasm and then keep right on moving.
That can be anger coming out. I guess that's how it gets manifested. Is things that they're saying. So that certainly can be a weakness of that temperament. So with those weaknesses that we've talked about, and there are others, we're just hitting on the top three here, major ones we see: difficult to motivate, uninvolved in life, and using the tongue as kind of a verbal weapon, if you like, or a weapon to disarm others. What are some of the most common strongholds that we see operating in phlegmatics, or people who are primarily phlegmatic? What do you think of the major one that we see? I think
slumber. I would have to say slumber, just because of the apathetic approach and indifference to life, because they're not involved. They just, I think one of the things they probably say the most is, I don't really care. Yeah. It's fine. I don't really care. So that would lend to itself with apathy.
I was going to say apathy and indifference kind of would be under that strongman of slumber, right?
Yeah.
Apathy. So just a big one. You just apathy. That's tough, right? That's a spirit. If that's in a person's life, it helps keep them on the sidelines.
I think isolation is under slumber too, and I think that would kind of go along with this temperament because they kind of, like I said before, that uninvolved piece, they're their own island. They could be happy on their own island, like Tom Hanks. Maybe he wasn't so happy on that island, but they would survive on that island well.
That's probably true. They may not have tried to get off as hard as Tom did. And you see, looking out, I'm going to submit to you that Tom was not a melancholy, and he wasn't probably a phlegmatic. He had to have a friend, right?
Yeah, he needed that.
He had Wilson.
Wilson.
He invented Wilson. So, that's, and given the job he had there at the FedEx, and, he probably wasn't it's interesting because we've talked about temperament types being very helpful, indicating what kind of job that you would be in. So he would very likely a sanguine or a choleric. Yeah. So he needed a buddy.
Yeah, he did.
There came Wilson. So anyways, we digress.
Sidebar. Yeah.
Yeah, sidebar. So we talked about, so slumber. Under that strongman of slumber, you would see the apathy and indifference. But I think there's another one too that we need to talk about that's under the realm of haughtiness and pride, and probably two major spirits under that we see a lot. One we talked about is stubbornness. look, it's good to persevere, but that spirit of stubbornness, there's a spirit behind that. And that needs to go. We need to be yielded. It keeps us from yielding to the Lord in our life. It keeps us from entering into deepness relationships with our significant others and family where we're not willing to yield our position. And so that spirit of stubbornness, we see that a lot, don't we?
And I think sarcasm would fall under that
tongue thing, right?
Tongue under haughty too. And then think about this one, perfectionism, because they are so efficient and detail oriented. I bet you there's some perfectionism in this temperament as well.
So, a lot of things and as you know, our ministry and how we approach things, we have strong men and ruling spirits and other ministries too as well. But under our group of haughty is where we would see that spirit of sarcasm. We would see stubbornness under there as well, and critical spirits, and certainly sarcasm and perfectionism would be under that. So, but certainly under that haughty spirit, we would definitely see things like stubbornness and sarcasm are certainly two of the major ones. So we talked about slumber. And then the third area that we see a lot of when we deal with phlegmatics is
fear, because they're great procrastinators. And by that, I mean, if they don't know how to conquer a task, if they are given something that they don't know how to do, because they are usually quite efficient and perfectionistic, they will put it off. It gets sent to the side of the desk because of fear of failure, fear of the unknown, which comes across as procrastination. They won't tackle it. So they'll just put it off and put it off and put it off. And, this speaks to you parents who have children that are just procrastinating, and you can't motivate them to do what it is that you want them to do. It could be, just think about it, it could be fear of failure, could be fear of the unknown, that they don't know how to do it or they won't do it well enough, but that it just doesn't matter to them too. They'll just put it off. And procrastination is a big one under that spirit of fear, or that stronghold of fear.
I think it is, and we see that a lot. And under fear, there's other spirits as well. I mean, that any temperament can be dealing with, insecurity and inadequacy and inferiority and some measure. And like I say, they just. But I definitely think that fear of making a mistake, that because they're so timid in so many ways, they pull back so much, that fear of making a decision, fear of getting it wrong, and coupled with the low energy, sometimes it just takes effort to do things.
Low energy,
they to do research and to get involved, and keeps them at bay. So it hinders them from all aspects of getting too deeply into things, whether it's analysis or getting too deeply into their relationships. They're just happier to sit back on the sidelines. So
yeah, you said low energy. They're always so concerned about expending how much energy they're going to have to expend, or how late are they going to be out at night. I think about this with work, in different social settings. But even when I was young, I have a few friends that are phlegmatic and inclusion, and even at 18 and 19 years old, you would hear them say, well, God, how far away is it from our house, and how long do you think we're going to be out? Because I've got to get my rest. I need to get my sleep. They have an inordinate price on that. It's a very high need for them to get their rest. Which at 18 and 19 years old, I always used to think that was so odd, but they're very much like that still today.
Yeah, there you go. You were not in that phlegmatic quadrant at that point.
No, I was not.
So no, absolutely. So yeah, I think once again, though, the common theme is just stubbornness, low energy, peacemakers, and so the strongholds that can be associated with that are, those weakness, tempers, the devils will try to work in those in people areas. And those are the things many times that people, the strongholds that we see in phlegmatics. And of course, the answer is if there's demonic strongholds, and we've talked about this in other podcasts and of course all our articles, that like if you got a demonic stronghold and the stuff that you're doing to counter this isn't working, then you need deliverance. I mean, there's no other way. The demonic spirits that work in your life in their soulish realm, they got to come out, and whatever they are, and there are other spirits, of course, associated. We talk. These devils can open the door for others, like pornography and addictions and whatnot. But these seems to be the main ones that the phlegmatics deal with, and so. Get deliverance. That's important. But apart from deliverance, and even after deliverance, and aside from deliverance, when the spirits try to come back to the house, the battlefield is the mind.
Right.
And so, sometimes it's a matter of, discerning the spirits when they come back. And then there's an element of just say, well, I'm going to do in the flesh. I'm going to step out in the natural and do some things to counter these weaknesses. And we've talked about, there's some of these weaknesses that we've talked about, being stubborn and uninvolved and using the tongue unwisely. I mean, that's not an excuse for bad behavior. Now, people with phlegmatics, they're not going to be the life of the party.
No.
And they're not going to be out.
They're going to want to go home early.
And that's okay. There's no condemnation in that. But some of these areas, we in areas of our life, especially, we need to be engaged and involved. So from a specific tactical takeaways that people should be involved in terms of spiritual warfare realm is we would say, man, just look at you. Some parts of your life, you just need to be engaged, right? You can't be an observer in everything.
Yeah, no. You have families, you have children, you have relationships around you at work. You can't just island off and float away.
And park by your computer or sit with your phone all the time.
Right.
And look, at everybody does that in a measure. I get that. But others will set it aside and engage. And for the phlegmatics, they have to make more of a focused effort because it's not a natural thing.
Right. Yeah, they got to come out of their little bat cave. Yeah.
Come out of the bat cave, get engaged, and especially if you're a spouse, it takes effort. I've talked to many marriage counseling situations. If the person's a melancholy and one's a loner or one's a phlegmatic and the other melancholy, and they don't talk, they just drift along until there's an explosion. And usually the melancholy explode, they get angry, they can't take it anymore, and the phlegmatic just sits there like, a little deer in the headlights, and they're just not engaged, and it takes effort. And so I don't know how you do that other than to say, Lord, what's your will for me? What are you calling me to do? Learn. Do the things. You need to get books on boundaries, how to set boundaries, do them. You need some parenting, start to do that. But just say, I need to do some of these things. And being engaged, whether it's in life, being engaged in church.
Yeah.
A lot of phlegmatics will sit at home and watch TV or watch their evangelist on TV. It's like, no, not good enough.
No, I think, and I like some of the online ministries a lot, and I watch them, but I tell you what, the idea of being one body is coming together for corporate worship. So it kind of dispels that sitting alone behind your computer thing. You need to be in a place where you can worship the Lord together as one body.
Exactly. So being engaged, engage in life. And I would say a second specific suggestion that we have, we talked about the tongue, how phlegmatics can use the tongue as a verbal defense, and others, we've done a podcast, we've got a whole slew of articles about the tongue is a spiritual force, and the tongue is the power of life and death. We can speak curses over others, word curses, and we can use the tongue as a creative force for good. So for you phlegmatics out there, if you're speaking curses or word curses, or ask the Lord to forgive you and break the word curses that you've spoken over people. If you've spoken over yourself, or I'm so stupid, or you're stupid, or you're this or that. If you've used your tongue as a weapon, confess it, repent of it, turn away, maybe seek forgiveness from the person that you spoke them to. If you've spoken stuff over yourself, break those word curses, and then turn the dial. Repentance is to turn towards God and choose to start speaking life over your situations. Catch yourself as sarcastic. So forgive me for being sarcastic. Forgive me for saying that. And it's a learned skill. It's like anything in the kingdom of God. You learn how to do it. It may not be natural. For phlegmatics, it's not natural. And it's like, just learn to start speaking life, not death. In the tower of light, learn how to speak blessings, thanking the Lord for what he's done. Speak life over the situation. And just learning how to turn that around, that you're not using your wry or dry sense of humor to hurt people. And that's a counseling thing, but if you just recognize that a tongue is a spiritual force, you've used it for evil, receive God's forgiveness and turn in a new direction.
Amen.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think so. And those are, I guess, probably two of the major things we would encourage phlegmatics to do. So, fellas, anything else you want to add about that?
No, I don't think so. I think the phlegmatics have just got to take a look at some of their relationships and see how they're going, and listen to some of the complaints that maybe they've heard from their spouses in light of what we've gone over today, and see if it lines up. Because, if you are disengaged, if you're not very involved, and these are things that you've heard over and over and over again, then it's time to rise up and make some changes, like Don said. So good thing. This is a blessed temperament of God, the peacemaker, the detail, nothing ruffles their feathers. But again, there's some places where you need to make some changes in your life and move closer in.
And I would say as a counselor, when we come in and we meet with people and we get their profiles, see their phlegmatics, a lot of times, even before we've done the profiles, the phlegmatics, when they come in, sometimes they're just your hardest ones to get information out of. They will, if you ask a specific question, you may get a specific answer. You may get some waffling around, but they're not ones to talk. Mm-mm. And so just getting them to talk and open up and share, and, they're not too passionate about anything. Even when they're, I don't get too mad, I don't like this or I don't like that. And it's like, they're a challenge.
Yeah, you get very short answers. Yes.
You get short. You don't see the passion. You don't see them crying and breaking down or, and I'm not saying that's necessary, but boy, you love to see them passionate about something, upset or angry or motivated to change. And sometimes if it's not there, it's there. So they're a challenge to counsel too. Mm-hmm. So God bless them. God made phlegmatics. He loves them.
Yeah.
And like I say, there's great strengths and weaknesses to them, and they can be wonderful parents and teachers and spouses and everything else. But just like every temperament, Lord, use the things you've given me, the blessings, the peacemaker, the calmness. That's good. The faithfulness and the persistence. But Lord, the weaknesses change me and transform me. Yeah. So hope this has been helpful for you. This is the last of the series. We've covered all of the 5 temperaments in this podcast series. Next time we'll be on a different topic. I encourage you to listen to all of them, share them with somebody that you think might benefit from them. We would certainly love to hear from you here at Above and Beyond. We have our ministry or our on iTunes. The channel name is deliveranceministry.fm. Please leave a review for us there. We'd appreciate it very much. Sign up for our resource library on the website. Get access to all of our free resources, articles, podcasts, blogs, and whatnot. Of course, we have also a great number of resources you can purchase at the online store: deliverance training materials, spiritual warfare training materials. We have our Christian counseling degree program information there as well. Take a look at our Warrior Partners page. Be part of what we're doing. You can be a one-time or a monthly contributor. If these podcasts have blessed you in any way, please consider just making a donation. Like I say, there's provision there for one-time or ongoing monthly giving, and we'll use the funds wisely to invest in deliverance ministry resources and to make deliverance ministry available worldwide to those who need it. We thank you for listening to this podcast. We look very much to getting together with you the next time. Thank you, and God bless you.